Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., we come your way, 9 programs, 9 topics, 9 guests, 9 different conversations that I hope you will tune into. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. And we also have these as podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews, and I hope that you will subscribe and then select notifications. So when a new conversation is posted, you'll be able to tune into it. I hope you'll do that. I also hope that you will support the work that we are doing here financially. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask you for the email address to whom you are sending, richard@richarddugan.com is the email you want to use. That's richard@richarddugan.com. We also ask that you spend some time going within, listening to that still small voice during this, the decade of perfect vision. And with that being said, we are going to dive into you might call it part 2 of a conversation that we started a few weeks back with a very special guest. Her name is Suzanne Taylor. She produces stimulating events, projects, and experiences for, well, the sophisticated audience, yes, with a visionary voice that challenges the status quo and helps people feel inspired to create a positive collective vision. Susan Taylor, welcome back to Tell Me Your Story.
I am so happy to be here talking to you today. I'm so fired up about this subject that we have today, which I went and reviewed before now. And it's like, oh God, every time I go back and look at it, this thing I, quote, wrote, I held the pen and something else wrote, which I'm not much of a woo-woo person. I don't know. I just did that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just am so knocked out. Every time I look at it, I think, oh my God, this is the Bible for our time.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Exactly. Inside the Intelligence. We're going to talk about, that's the name of the, basically it's, I guess you could describe it, what, as a pamphlet? It's not a book yet.
No,
but it's just a little pamphlet.
15 pages or 18, I'm not quite sure, 20 pages, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. And it's there for people who want to look into it. And by the way, Suzanne Taylor, she's been involved with film since she graduated Phi Beta Kappa, which, by the way, my father graduated Phi Beta Kappa, but it was from a junior college. You also graduated summa cum laude from New York University, if I'm not mistaken, and you have been an actress, or I guess they refer to everybody, regardless of gender, as an actor. I find that an interesting derivation over the years.
They do. Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and you've also crossed over to other sides, the other side of the camera, as an executive producer of the 2022 feature documentary Crop Circles, Quest for Truth, which ties into another guest we've had on here, Britt Elders, who put out her book in reference to contact with the Pleiades. So that was fascinating. And
yeah, she interviewed me. I'm one of her guests.
Yeah, so we're glad to have both of you on the program. So this is exciting. But what we're going to talk about today, of course, is Inside the Intelligence. First of all, let's talk about what we're referring to as the intelligence. What is this intelligence that we're going to be getting into?
It's God.
Okay. So
now, I don't know what you think God is. I don't know.
Right.
He, she, it, whatever it is, it's the force that created the universe.
So let me ask you, in that regard, it is said in one of the ancient wisdom teachings, as I refer to them, that we, the human being, we also, who some consider us a spiritual being having a human experience, we were created in the image and likeness thereof. Okay? The intelligence, the creator, however you want to phrase it. So let me ask you, what part of us, from your experiences, your investigation, your research, and so forth, what part of the human being was created in the image and likeness of this intelligence?
Well, image and likeness is funny, isn't it? That's kind of a material world description, and we're talking very non-material. So, and I guess that's kind of what gave us all those pictures of the guy with the beard, image.
Yeah.
Likeness and image more in the mental state than in the objective physical state, I would say. And it's funny, when I was a kid, it was a very simple question: do you believe in God? Yes or no? But now it's, well, what do you mean by God?
Yeah.
It's not such a simple question. It's the age-old question, where did we come from, and how did it all happen, and where's all this design coming from? Millions of different species, creatures, and all different designs. Presumably, humans are the only creatures we know with the capacity to design. But the universe is full of design. Where did that come from? It's not natural selection, that's after the designs are here and then they get improved upon. Where'd the originals come from? So you're asking me?
Yeah, and it's fascinating when I happen to come across, and I like watching the little short videos on Facebook. They call them oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. They're just the short little things. I mean, 20, 30, 40 seconds, some of them are, they're all different kinds of things. And there's one gentleman in particular who I'm fascinated by because of the way he talks about these types of more esoteric, if you will, or spiritual things, is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And you didn't mention my second movie, which is the one I'm the filmmaker on. You mentioned the one I executive produced, but after that I made my own called What on Earth, about crop circles. I only mentioned in crop circles because they could change consciousness. If there's another consciousness visiting us, it's going to get all of our attention. But one of the pictures, still picture that I bought was by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And it gave me opportunity to talk to him because I had to buy his picture, for which I paid more than I paid anybody else for material in that movie. It's just one still picture.
Yeah.
It's a picture of a Manhattan street, and you're at the street and you see the tall buildings on either side, and the sun is rising in between. And it was to illustrate the difference between the material world and nature, because there was nature with the big tall buildings with the sun right in the middle of it. So I had the opportunity to talk to him. He would not pay. He was so dismissive. He was so, crop circles, how ridiculous. But he still got his money and allowed me to use his picture. So anyway, it's my Neil deGrasse Tyson story.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the crop circles has to do with the quest for truth. You are also the producer, as you've mentioned, of What on Earth, Inside the Crop Circle Mystery.
Yeah, that's my movie. I'm the filmmaker on that. Yeah. Writer, producer, director, star, everything. The crop circles are there too.
Yeah. And I just find it fascinating how easily and quickly people dismiss these kinds of things that other people experience. Working for a Christian's radio station for 15 years, I took the position that if somebody comes to me and says, I had this experience or that experience, it doesn't make any difference to me whether it's supported in some ancient wisdom teaching that they hold near and dear or not. They had an experience. It changed their lives. And who am I to come along and argue that it's not valid because it's not written in the text? That's
well, especially when you don't have any experience or know what you're talking about, which is what happens with crop circle critics.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But you can understand why, if you don't know anything about it, you think it's ridiculous. It's just awesome, the
Yeah.
possibility.
It truly is. And the one thing that is fascinating to me, of course, is this conversation that I've had with people such as Britt Elders over this conversation surrounding this one element, and that is, are we or are we not alone in the universe? And the basic calculation for how many galaxies there are in the universe, at least the known universe that we're getting close to.
Couple trillion.
Yeah, a couple trillion. And again, once again, galaxies, ladies and
Mm.
gentlemen.
Each one
That's
has billions of stars. Yeah, we have
yeah.
a few billion in our galaxy
And to
alone.
make the assumption, because that's what it is, that we are the only ones out here. I've been on for example, when I was on a cruise ship up on the top deck, okay, and I'm looking out, and this is now at night with a full moon, and you're up on the top deck, and you're looking out over the ocean, and you can actually see the curvature of the ocean. And a couple of thoughts went through my mind, and this was back in 1993 for me. If I went overboard, first of all, it's very unlikely that they would ever find me in the immensity of this ocean, and at night of all things, which sort of speaks to almost the insignificance of an individual human being in the ocean, in the water. And yet at the same time, when I think about that passage I referred to earlier about how we were created in the image and likeness thereof, I'm thinking, okay, you had, and again, I don't know how many cells make up an egg, okay, in a woman's fallopian tubes, but with the sperm, it is, I guess the calculation is roughly, on a good day, you're talking about millions of sperm cells, and only one got through. Only one out of those millions. And it makes each one of us so unique and so special in that regard, and yet still created in the image and likeness thereof. And that's what's fascinating to me. So I want to ask you.
But wait a minute now, you think that there's got to be life out there because of the trillions of planets that
Yeah,
are out there.
I mean, it seems to me a
That's a
little
whole
on the
conversation.
preposterous side. It
Pardon
seems,
me?
I said it seems a little on the preposterous side to make the assumption that of the trillions of galaxies, and in each one of those galaxies, there are millions of stars, that we're out here, we're alone, as if I had jumped overboard and I was now in the ocean, being left behind, and I'm just out in this body of water, and I'm the only one out here. I'm all alone. There's nobody else out here.
Well, that's kind of a good analogy in a way, because it may be that we're the only one. I'm a Brian Swim aficionado. He's my hero of thought. And we've had this conversation. He's a physicist and a mystic. But he points out that it's possible we are the only ones. The condition for life is so precise, like one cell different or whatever, it wouldn't have worked. And it just may be that it could be, I'm only saying, because the other argument is, oh, you got so many billions and trillions, of course there's life. Not necessarily. It's still an argument.
Yeah.
It's still and then if you think, oh my God, if we're the only ones, it's almost like what an obligation to do it well,
That's an
the
interesting point in and of
universe,
itself. Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting observation on your part, that let's just say we're alone, and taking your point. Well, if we're the only ones out here, then yeah, we need to do it right. And unfortunately, we're not doing it right, obviously, because one of the I guess you call them catchphrases that we use on the program is that we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. And yet, here's another interesting twist on this. Each one of us, and this is from the metaphysical perspective, we agreed to have certain experiences coming into this particular lifetime. Again, I don't know about any other lifetimes, but there have been studies. Dr. Newton, who conducted life between lives testing of hundreds of people. I've read a couple of three of his books as far as that's concerned. All of these people independent of one another, and yet came up with quite similar experiences going from one lifetime to another. I have been through the hypnosis process and went through my last lifetime before coming here. But we all agree to have certain experiences. We quote unquote sign a contract. Okay, we have this contract that I'm going to do this and this and this and this. That's what I want to experience. However, that doesn't mean that it's locked in concrete, that that you can change it anytime you want, and so forth, which creates a bit of a challenge for a lot of folks who are really vested in the material world. Okay. What I find fascinating, I don't know about you, I was born and raised Catholic. I was a Baha'i for a year and a half back in the 90s. I have studied a lot of the other great religions and ancient wisdom teachings, as I mentioned, taken some different programs and on and on and on. And when it comes to the criticism of the different philosophies, as I call them, I find it hypocritical of one group that claims that this is the source and this is what's out there and this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to happen. And it sounds like a fairy tale. In some cases, maybe even a horror film, but it's fiction. And yet they criticize someone else for having an even more outlandish idea, like there's this giant mothership that's going to be coming to take us all away. I don't know who's right. And quite honestly, I don't care. But when we talk about getting inside this intelligence do you think that's something that, well, first of all, it seems to me, obviously, because you wrote the 18-page little booklet, that we should care about getting inside the intelligence. But would you say that this intelligence that we need to get into, it needs to be done at least initially on an individual basis? As they say in Christianity, you have a personal relationship with God. And if that's the case, then stay out of my business. And then eventually maybe we will get to a place, we'll raise our consciousness where we will get into the intelligence on a collective level.
Please God, so to speak. Yeah. Well, that, you can also see there's a progression that's gone on. These times that we're in are so unbelievable. And yet, if you look at the progress of humanity, we're getting smarter all the time. And some of the ways we get smarter is we get stupid and then we have to redirect, and it impels us to get smarter again. And now we're in the biggest redirect ever, where we're so capable of destroying ourselves, as technologically in the past was not the case. So this is maybe the biggest challenge ever that humanity has faced. But over the years, we went to civil war over the humanity and what we're all about. And if you do look back, I mean, even in my lifetime, women's lib, I would not be sitting here if if it hadn't been for women's lib. I was Mrs. Him for a long time, and ever since I'm not Mrs. Him, I become me. So we keep moving forward. The trajectory is forward, even though it's backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, but it's a spiral, it goes up and up or forward and forward. And here we are at the biggest crunch point ever, but we've been at crunch points before, and each crunch point is a question. Are we going to surpass the situation, transcend the situation that's challenging us, or are we going to sink? It's always sink or swim, and each time we've come back and swam. So here we are again. But this is the most serious ever, and maybe it will propel us into the most evolved ever, because what we do have to do elementally is come out of separation, which is the material world, get the most for yourself, into union, into understanding we are one humanity, and you do to yourself as you do to somebody else, or vice versa.
Yeah.
We're all interconnected, and if we got it, really, really got it, we would do everything to make life wonderful for everybody. Big shift on the cusp. So I'm totally devoted to getting us over that cusp because the alternative is destruction, and we could go away over this. The nuclear issue, global warming is descending upon us.
Yeah.
But any day somebody makes a mistake, even the button gets pushed, human life is over.
Yeah.
Could be, big enough, explosion. Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah.
And that we don't take that seriously.
Mm.
We still mess around. How many hundreds of nukes are there, or is it millions? Are we crazy? Yes, we are crazy. We are.
Well, now there was a movie that came out, I think it was in the late 70s, maybe the early 80s. And it was called War Games.
Oh, War Games.
War Games. You remember that movie?
No, I'm remembering The Day After, which was huge.
That was also very profound as well.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the postscript to War Games. And this young man, he was just playing a video game, and somehow it turned into real life in the movie, where the US and Soviets launched their missiles according to the computers that they had. And, and it was annihilation. And it turns out it was just a test or a game that the computers had linked together. So now you have this issue of AI and artificial intelligence. And then you have to wonder, what's, could that propel us into a War Games scenario only for real? And I will just say as a sidebar, if that were to happen, I hope to God I'm at ground zero. I do not want to be a survivor of that. From what I've seen from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and so forth, and even from people who were there testing these weapons back in the 50s and 60s. Just get me out.
Aren't we insane that we've created a methodology for destroying ourselves? I mean, we crazy.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, and then you also have the other element too, and I've heard these scenarios. I keep hearing, for example, that nuclear energy is clean. No, it's not. All right, maybe initially when you're generating the power from the power plants, maybe it is. But what happens when those fuel rods are no longer generating what needs to be generated to what are you going to do with them? Oh, we'll bury them in the ground. Oh, that's real smart, because that's going to basically contaminate all of the ground around, and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they're talking about these other natural phenomenons, if you will, called volcanoes. And they've got the giant one there. What is it, in Yellowstone? This giant caldera, among other things. And and the list goes on, and we could get real pessimistic here, but we want to try to keep this on the upbeat in terms of getting inside the intelligence. Inside the Intelligence is a little pamphlet. How do people get a copy of that?
Oh, good question. Email me. um, we I've got an enthusiast now, I think I may have mentioned it, who just says we got to do something with this. So we're in the throes of, okay, what should we do with this? How to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reinvigorated. Every time I go back into it, I go, oh my God, this should not be hidden. This should be out.
Yeah.
So I'm on another, swing of, okay, now what are we going to do? How are we going to get this out? So we shall see.
So what email address shall we guide people to so if they would like a copy, they can ask for a
Yes, I'd be
copy?
happy to send it. I can just send it in email. It's very easy.
All right.
It's Suzanne, my name, with a Z, Suzanne, at mightycompanions.org, spelled just like it sounds. It's org.org.
Right.
Mighty, Mighty Companions.
Okay.
That was an old, that's the title of my nonprofit. It's called Mighty Companions. And it comes from the Course in Miracles, just one of the sacred texts that, I love them all. It says that you will proceed in life until some point where you will stop, you will rest a while, and you will shed unnecessary things, and you will not go on from here alone. You'll go on with mighty companions. And that seemed like a good core thought to build my material world around. So I have a nonprofit so I can spend before tax dollars doing my good works. And so it's Suzanne at mightycompanions.org.
We'll have that in the description for both
Good.
YouTube as well as SoundCloud, so that people, as well as your website too, and we'll be linked to that website, which is basically, and I had it right in front of me just a moment
Well,
ago.
it's suspeaks.org is the
Thank
website.
you.
But Richard, if anybody picks up on that, seriously, I'm getting serious now about how to get that out in a serious way.
Mhm.
And again, I've got somebody really pushing me to do that, and that helps.
Yeah.
And you help here, getting me a platform, where we can talk about it a bit. So I'm looking now. I'm looking, how am I going to do that? Obviously, I can self-publish, but
Sure.
I don't want to sitting there and nobody reads it.
Right.
I'm like an influencer to say, hey, I'll get it out there. So if anybody is listening to this who could play that part, be in touch, because I can easily self-publish. I just don't want to publish it and then have it, not bet anywhere. So
Right. Suzanne Taylor is my guest, and we're talking about the little booklet that she has called Inside the Intelligence. I want to ask you about some of the contents of this wonderful little pamphlet that's what I'll refer to it as anyway.
yeah.
That you have. Now, first of all, you do not claim to have written it, even though you penned it. You didn't actually write it. It came through you, correct?
It's correct. Whenever I read it, I go, who wrote that? I mean, I know, but not, I said that was my fingers made those words.
Yeah.
It's so smart. It's brilliant. What can I say?
Okay.
It was not my conscious thought. I just turned off my conscious mind, and there it was, just coming through. So it's barely edited. A word or two here or there, but I did not edit it. It's not moved around. It's the
Right.
way it happened,
So can you give us a little preview of some of the basic points in this, we'll call it a document called Inside the Intelligence?
Well, the funny thing is when I read it and I go, oh, I'll put some quotes out, and every sentence is a quote. So now you're asking me, what's in these pages? So, okay. It's basically a directive for me.
Mhm.
What am I what should I do? But it's the me who would be saving the world,
Mhm.
So what should I do? Well, one of the things that it tells me to do, a primary thing, is there's two things. One is how I am myself. I personally have to be a clear being. It's almost like my teacher saying, you wake up, Suzanne, you stop doing the stupid things you do. You have to be up for this job. And then the job is collect the heroes, collect the people who will read this and go, oh my God. And that's what I'm going to try to do now. Now I'm moved to really do that, to collect the team,
Right.
because if one even small unit can totally tune in to the majesty of the universe, that could change everything, First, for a seed, like a seed,
Right.
grows,
Mhm.
So that's my job that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to look for my companion. You want to be on my team?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The whole point of this program is to provide new paradigms for a new world, give people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true and find those new ways of living. I wanted to ask you in regards to carry this a little bit further. Um, Greg Braden on this program many years ago made the comment that, and he actually quoted a number out of the population at that time. It was more of a percentage. You only need a small percentage of people to get together that will actually affect change, that will raise the consciousnness of the planet. And what was astounding to me that it wasn't even near like 500 million people or 500,000, which I thought was rather astounding, especially now considering we have 8.1 billion people. So and of course, even in the ancient wisdom teachings, it talks about how wherever two or more are gathered, yes, in my name, da 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 da. There I am in the midst. To me, that would be the intelligence, and that we can basically accomplish whatever it is we set our minds to. This intelligence, and I'm trying to remember the philosopher who stated it, says that there is only one mind in the universe, and we're just all parts of that one mind, or intelligence, if you will. You believe that as well?
absolutely. Again, I'm back. Brian Swim, my great hero. Um, he, we need a new creation story. Um, we need a story where we don't picture ourselves as materialists. We need an understanding, and science now supports this. Hubble, 100 years ago or so, uh, changed everything scientifically. It showed us we're in an evolving universe, not a fixed universe. We're here on a dead Earth, here to use it. No, no, no. It started, and you can think of a seed, just an analogy,
Mhm.
but it started from nothing, and everything sprang forth. Now, everything is still springing forth. It's evolving. It's not dead. It's alive. And in that aliveness is all of us evolving together, one humanity, all interrelated in this cosmic soup. The noosphere is a name that has now been applied to this next layer beyond the materialist layer, is the noosphere, which is the thinking layer or the non-material layer. So, that is definitely, the idea that you're expressing, that
Mhm.
indeed it is one humanity. And, all we need to do is get that, because we operate on a principle. If we think we're
Mhm.
here to make the most money, that's what we'll do. But if we're here to take care of this gorgeous earth that we
Yeah.
have, we operate totally differently.
Mhm.
If we care about everybody else, we'll make it a good world for everybody. It's a radical shift of perspective, and this is what we're up against now. We're up against the challenge. Will we get that, or will we still, try to defeat each other? In which event we'll probably kill each other. So,
Yeah,
this is
that's
the big hump now.
very sad in that respect. And yet that's what's going on in the world. There's even apparently, to your point, the Supreme Court is actually going to rule on the possibility, and now the new phrase is houseless,
But it's a phrase.
unhoused,
Oh, unhoused, yeah.
that being unhoused could be a crime. In other words, through no, and we'll put it down to earth more so, that due to, in a manner of speaking, no fault of your own, through, could be medical, this or that or the other, employment issues. Hey, AI has taken over my job. I got nothing, and this is what I was trained for, and I can't do it anymore, and so on and so forth. And now they're on the street. Well, guess what? Being on the street could be a crime. And it's like, so we're going to incarcerate more human beings into an incarceration system that is already overburdened and overtaxed, with people, probably most, who don't even belong there, because, and so on and so forth. But that's another subject. One of the other aspects of this that I'd like to discuss with you, have you expound upon, is the process of getting inside the intelligence. We've already defined it. We call it God, whatever your understanding is thereof, and wanting to connect. Now, we talk on this program about spending time during this decade of perfect vision and going within. Is that the process that you have been sharing through the booklet, the document, Inside the Intelligence, that's where we need to go to connect with, to get inside the intelligence?
Well, there's no absolute for a how-to, and we could talk a lot about how do you come into this new understanding.
Yeah.
One aspect of it is intellectual understanding, this thing we've been talking about, understanding that we're in an evolving universe. And when Brian Swim teaches you, he moves you. So that he's so charismatic that you get it, and you oh my God, I'm here for the wrong thing, just intellectually.
Right.
But then there's viscerally, you might say, or beyond thought, just the absolute of the way things are. There's many different ways. For me, psychedelics were my ticket to say personally, oh my God, this is not the universe I thought it was, and I'm in a much bigger universe than that. And in fact, one of the key things is like memorable peak experiences that I had taking mushrooms decades ago, literally back in the 80s, was the sense that if one human being could become absolutely accepting, that's a word, that's a significant word. Acceptance is the primary word for human positioning. We absolutely have to accept everything the way it is. Doesn't mean you like it, and doesn't mean you're not going to do something about it. But before you do anything, you have to get it, because reality is. And fighting reality is a losing battle, because it is. So there's and that's kind of the work you do on yourself when you're not on psychedelics, rather than railing against things, or somebody says something, you fight them back. No. First, there's a primary position. of understanding. It's Jesus, you know.
Mhm.
And if one human being could do that now, that's my message that I got, my experience. If one human being could practice absolute acceptance, it would change everything. It's so powerful. And so that's been decades for me, my direction, my directive. Okay, Suzanne, come back. No, no, no. First of all, let it be. Let it, the way it is the way it is. Let it be. And then we'll go forward, you know. So, but you know, I've never been a big meditator, but that is an access point for many people, Zen sort of meditation, maybe any meditation, because you know we're stuck in this crust. This is a material thing. It's an objective thing. What we're trying to tune into is what's outside of all of this. That it's the no, it will be the noosphere. It's that next layer in the universe that we've got to come into, where how we are is the primary movement. The control, the directive of the universe comes from this understanding that's outside the body. It's not about making the body rich. It's about this huge playing field of mind or beyond mind, of awareness that, you know, when you're there, that's the place the world becomes beautiful. You know, if everybody were there, we would just cooperate and make everything work, you know. So I mean, that's our, you know, objective. And then, you know, there's other ways. There's drumming. There's, you know, there are different ways of getting outside the shell so that you're in that kind of timeless, boundless, what have you. You know, interestingly enough, I'll just tell you one little other peak experience I had. I was babysitting two people who were on MDMA, ecstasy. And it was years ago. I don't know what they put in ecstasy now that gets people doing raves, but we didn't want to do raves when we took it. We wanted to love each other. That's all we wanted to do. But what I noticed was I had not done this, and the two people are, and they are talking to each other and what I observed was there was no past for them, no regrets, no pain. There was no future, fear, where it's going to happen. No. They were riveted in the present. All there was this acceptance, this present moment. And all you could feel in the vibe was love. Tune us into this present moment, no past, no future. All there is love. So that's another, you know, ecstasy is another. That's not a psychedelic, but it's definitely an opening to the larger universe, where it's all love and we care about each other. We care about everything, ourselves included.
You know, there are even writings, and I cannot recall whether it was Ram Dass or Paramahansa and one of his gurus who had an experience where one of the devotees decided that they were going to play a little trick, and they put into the guru's tea or food or what have you an hallucinogen.
That was Ram Dass.
Ram Dass. And nothing happened. However, the one who had placed the substance into the tea began to hallucinate, have the experiences, and the response following their coming down from the trip was, you assume that I'm not already there. I don't need this to get there. I'm already there. That's not to say that, for example, I have the DVD of DMT, you know, that particular modern day, shall we say, hallucinogen, that people will go down, like, for example, down to Peru, and they will enter what's referred to as a safe space to where they can have these experiences. And in the DVD, I was astounded by one gentleman who he was talking about his experience, and at the end of his explanation or his story, he asked the question, so how long was I gone? Because it seems like I was gone for days. He's, you're only gone for 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That is, and I've never had any interest whatsoever as I was growing up in any of the drugs, marijuana or otherwise. And that's not to say that I haven't tried. Back when I was in my late 30s, I tried smoking pot twice. Yes, I inhaled because it burned like hell going down. But it didn't have the effect on me that maybe it did on other people. It was like, I'd rather have a beer because a beer doesn't go down and doesn't burn. Okay. But that was how I felt in that regard. But when it comes to DMT and what I saw in that DVD, I'm thinking if it was in a controlled, safe space facilitated by people that I could trust, that would be one experience that I would be willing to take part in because it opened doors for a lot of people. They remained consciously aware of their experience that profoundly changed them.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody doing that who regretted it, although they didn't all have good trips. I've never done that. I'm a little bit chicken on that one. It's so powerful.
Exactly.
I know that it is. I actually was with some people who took that also, two people who lived in my house, and that was an interesting experience watching them. It was so different for both of them. One of them was lying on his back. The man was lying on his back, and he had a smile across his face that was like beatific. It was so blissed out. The woman was writhing all over, and she was monsters were everywhere. Wow, are they having different experiences? But in my awareness, everyone who comes back has had a life-changing experience that ultimately is good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm still chicken.
Well, and the thing is, it's not for everyone. I went through, for example, in the last maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 years, a local practitioner of LBL, Life Between Lives, that Dr. Newton, I can't remember his first name now, but anyway, Dr.
Andrew?
Newton, might be, and he wrote several books on the case studies, the experiences that people spoke about coming back from the hypnotic state. I went through that, but I was conscious and aware of everything. The practitioner, who's a good friend of mine as well, never, ever asked me leading questions. It was, what are you experiencing? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? As opposed to, are you hearing? And then they would fill in the blank. He didn't do that. And it was fascinating to the extent that I wouldn't mind going back to that life before this one. That was pretty cool. And yet I am actually living out portions of that life in the life I have now here in Santa Barbara. I live up in what's considered Los Padres National Forest, in a wilderness area. We have a certain element of seclusion and isolation where we live in the cottage, 2-room cottage. I love being out in nature and dealing with the various things. I've just completed the knocking down of the tall grasses, and I've gone out as far as I can. You know, they say 100 feet and so forth. But there's also there've also been 2 oak trees that fell, and I've been cutting those up and preparing those for firewood for the next winter, and so on. But I love being out there, and fortunately, right now we have the nice cool weather and the marine layer and those kinds of things. And so that's what I was in the previous life. I was a farmer, and I had my hands in the soil and so forth. I have to say that one of the most beautiful songs, or I should say lines in an Irish song, sung by Mary Black, that I quote regularly is, "You don't own the land owns you." And to me, that is so profound when I hear people talking about constitutional rights to own property and so forth. I mean, you don't own a damn thing. I don't care that you have a piece of paper. It means nothing. It means nothing. That land and that structure that it's on owns you because you now are required to take care of it, whether it's through regulations or whether it's just through a natural compulsion. I mean, I remember as a kid growing up, my mother gave each one of us tasks. On a weekend, we would clean the house or clean the yard or whatever the case might be, because we wanted to live in a nice place. And the neighbors up and down the street, they did the same thing. And it wasn't for
The
go ahead.
problem, of course, is all the people who are in survival, and they don't really have the luxury of these cosmic thoughts. They're just trying to eat.
Yeah,
You know,
that is the
and
downside.
that, if we were going to address one material thing in the world, objective thing in the world, we'd have some kind of universal basic income. Everybody would get taken care of with their basics met just for being human. Big one though, we can't.
The only downside to that, and this is the argument against it, is that, well, but too many people, they just want to live for free. They don't want to do anything. And so I'm thinking, well, if they were raised in such a way as they knew that part of their existence in this world was taking responsibility for where they are, it's like, I would even ask people, how often do you shower and shave and take care of your physical body? Now, those who live in structures, live in homes and so forth, and housing, whether they own or rent, probably do it on a fairly regular basis, to which I'd say, why? Why do you do that? What difference does it make? I mean, because you don't seem to care about this space, that you're living in. It's a dump. I mean, we've got people who hoard, and there are a lot of other psychological reasons for that too. And it's like, come on. All we need to do, and this is where I separate from those people who argue with the naysayers of climate change. Uh, I'm not going to talk to you about the science. I don't care about the science. We need to clean up our home. End of story. Period. We need
Logical, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's so elemental and
Yeah,
primary and fundamental. Yeah,
exactly.
but again, if you're not eating, you're not thinking what's primary. You're
That is
thinking,
true.
where's
That
my
is
meal?
Yeah,
You
that
know,
is true. That is true. Absolutely right. And there's
and if
more.
you're born into a violent culture,
Mhm. And
you
there's
know,
more than enough. There is no shortage of anything, only the distribution of everything. That's where the
really,
problem is, not in the
really,
supply, but in the distribution,
yeah.
and so forth. And what's also interesting, you kind of alluded to this earlier, in terms of the difference between individuality and collectivism and a living earth. Well, we in this country have a document that is supposedly living. There are some who say, no, it needs to stay exactly the way it is. Well, that makes no sense, considering the founding fathers put into that document provisions to modify it. But by the way, I had heard something, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but I was talking with someone the other day who made the comment that the founding fathers did not expect the country at that time in the late 1700s to last more than 10 or 15 years. They did not think it was going to last. A guest of mine who wrote a book having to do with returning to a more reasonable form of government, first question out of the chute was, so when was the last time we had a reasonable form of government? To which he said, about the last time was about 3 minutes after the ink had dried on the documents. That's the last time, because at that point now, everybody's trying to make sure their ox doesn't get gored. And it's interesting how individuality has usurped collectivism when the ancient wisdom teachings have taught us over and over again that we are all members of the same body, whether it's Christianity, we're all members of the body of Christ. Okay. Well, then where's the individualism? I certainly still have, and you do too, because we use our names, and you're female, I'm male, and so on and so forth. And we see the differences. But at the same time, I also know that I have a responsibility to the society in which I live and the planet I live on. I'm not going to, for example, do an oil change at the top of the hill where I live and just dump the oil out on the ground to where it will then slide down the hill. What if I lived down the hill from me? I wouldn't like that too much, let alone if it seeps into the water table, and the same difference.
Well,
Fascinating.
all that individuality did build the industrial world.
It did.
So
And we
you
can't
just
take
look
that
at
away. We don't
You
want
look
to
at
take
the
that away.
whole sweep of history, you know, and you
Mhm.
say, oh yeah, that's good. We did that, but then it went too far.
Yeah.
We stayed rugged individualists past where it served us. So here
Yeah.
we are.
Community, I think, is the most important. And you make a very, very valid point. One of the things that I find rather interesting in my observations of the arguments that are going on today, you hear about this one curriculum called critical race theory. I think it's misnamed. And I've talked with some teachers who have taught it and said, if it's being taught to teach people to hate America, then it's not being taught correctly. The purpose was to teach students about the good, the bad, and the ugly of America. Yes, your example withstanding, if it weren't for individualism, the Industrial Revolution never would have happened. We needed it. We're here now, but there's an evolutionary process that needs to take place. And there are people who struggle with that. They don't want, matter of fact, there are people who want to go back into the past. We need to
Well, people,
have things back.
people who are at the top end of the status quo are not so eager to revolutionize the system, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're about to the end of the program here, and I'm so grateful for what you have been sharing with us here on the program. Um, what would you say if you could codify it down? What would you say is the main message from inside the intelligence?
Well, for sure, it's to come together in a caring, world. For sure. I mean, it's the map, it's the roadmap to how to get there.
Okay. And are you a person whose glass is half full or half empty? I know
Oh,
the answer, but
you have to be half full. You can't be a pessimist. Why? I mean,
yeah,
what good does it do to woe is me at all? No, no, no. You have to keep yourself open to the good things that can be. It's just essential. That's the standing place. Be open to how good it can be.
absolutely. And we have opportunities, unlimited opportunities. And one of
We're here
these,
to serve. That's also the message of Inside the Intelligence. We're all here to serve, not to get to serve.
right, right. Well, Suzanne Taylor, I want to thank you so much for being a guest here on Tell Me Your Story again for the second time. We look forward to having you back again to continue this conversation because even if we repeat ourselves, it bears repeating. It absolutely bears repeating. And repetition of that message, I think, is important. And I encourage people to get a copy of this document called Inside the Intelligence. And
Help me
again,
get it published. Come on now, somebody out there.
absolutely. Well, you can go to Suzanne, Suzanne, at mightycompanions.org. That's mightycompanions.org. And we'll have that in the description portion of both the YouTube as well as the SoundCloud information. And then there's the website, of course, which is suspeaks.org. But we encourage you to use that email address and say, hey, I heard John tell me your story. Would love to have a copy of Inside the Intelligence. And I want to thank you again for joining us here on the program. It's just, I love having these conversations.
Me too.
I do like to ask the questions of my guests, the three that I always ask. The first of which is, who is Suzanne Taylor?
Is this the beginning of the program? Who is she? Well, she's here to make trouble. She is your friendly troublemaker. I've also been called, somebody once recently who knew a lot of what I've done in the past said, you should be the secretary of fun. Now, this is not such fun times, but I used to do a lot of fun things because I think that play is a very helpful modality to get us out of our stuckness and into imaginative places. So, I am the queen of getting us where we need to go.
What gets you up in the morning?
Oh, my mission for sure. I am so grateful that I care because, I'm not young, and a lot of people kind of it's at the end, and I'm not going to be here, but I still really care, and I'm so happy that I am. That's like a gift.
And finally, what was your best day?
Well, of course that question comes up, and I'll tell you, the best day ever was the day I made cheerleader in high school. I was the brains. I was not supposed to be the pretty girls, and they were the cheerleaders. And everybody tried out because you had to try out. But I never thought I was gonna. And I not only made cheerleader, but I made it in my sophomore year. Hardly anybody did. They made it in their junior year if they made it at all, or senior year. I have never been so ecstatic in my life because it gave me a chance to cheer and to be excited. Enthusiasm is entheos, the God within. So I got a chance to be the cheerleader, the God within, screaming, for success. So
That's
that was.
gonna that's gonna have to be a conversation for an entire program. I like that. I didn't know that. Thank you again, Suzanne Taylor, for joining us here on the program. And I encourage people to go to the website as well as the email address, which is in the description of the podcast and videocast. And again, I thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.